Hello, my lovely seekers and finders. Welcome to the Way of Truth number 40. My name is Artem, Artem Boysev, and I am a spiritual teacher. Let me hold on. I got a little bit of problem with StreamYard. Yes, here it is. Yes, so this is my website. Please feel free to check it out. And these are bi-weekly, every other week. Bi-weekly is probably 2 times a week, but these ones are every other week broadcasts where I speak to my students, I give guidance, I speak on all matter spirituality. So if you're in the spiritual path, please, by all means, come and join me. You can ask your questions, you can share your experiences. The best way to join those broadcasts is through StreamYard. So let me actually post a link too also. So these are broadcasted on Facebook, YouTube, and no, not Twitter, not this time. So Facebook and YouTube, and I posted this comment to both of the platforms. So if you just follow this link, you will be able to join the conversation live. It's a browser-based software, so all you need is a browser and a webcam, and you follow this link, and I'll be able to bring you on stage, and you can ask me a question, or share something, or whatever you want to share with the audience, or have a conversation. So I highly recommend this. This is much better. The more direct engagement with the teacher, the better. For this very reason, the physical presence works even better. But if for whatever reason you don't want to do that, you can also post comments to both Facebook and YouTube, and I'll be able to bring them on screen, just like I did with this one, and address it. So I also have a Discord community, which I will also post a link to quite quickly. So here it is. So if you wish to join my community, you can follow this link. It's a Discord server where people at different locations on the spiritual path share their experiences, help each other, support each other. So if you're struggling, if you have insight, if something has started to go on with you, if something is going on with you, then please join this community, and you might find some support and understanding there, which is oftentimes difficult to find in our society. So that would be it for the introduction. And we have one guest right now. I have one guest in the living room, and I'll bring him on stage. His name is Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Artem. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I spoke to you once before. You posted a short video of we were talking about not wanting to live on the spiritual journey.
Yes.
That was me. Yes. This is the second time.
Yes. Very many people, by the way, could relate to this video. I received some comments, and it's very relatable for a lot of people in the spiritual path. So thank you for asking this question and giving us the opportunity to make this relatable video. I hope it will help a lot of people.
I hope so. Yeah. So my heart is pounding because so I'm just going to give myself a minute.
Yes, please. Yes, take your time. Take your time.
So first, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because watching all of your lives, I've actually kind of binge watched all of your lives, so that I want.
Oh, really? I didn't know people do that. This is great.
I have to be honest, I didn't watch every single second, but I watched, let's say, 80%, because sometimes I would skip a little bit, but I went all the way to number 1. And so it was just, you said something like having a great teacher can make a huge difference.
Yes.
So I really feel that. Yeah. So thank you so much. So what I would like to say is, what I would like to try to do here is to face a huge fear of mine with you. Okay. And then I hopefully, if there's time, I have like 2 questions.
Okay.
So that's why my heart is pounding. Usually I'm a little nervous to be on camera, but this is much, much worse because of what's coming.
So what I usually recommend is before you talk, and this happens all the time in one-on-ones. So when I do one-on-ones, it happens all the time. It's probably a little bit exacerbated here because it's public, but it's the same. But it's the same thing that happens in one-on-one. So what I usually recommend is you close your eyes. We can take the time. There's no rush. Close your eyes. Settle in, relax. And tell me, where is the fear?
So,
in the body.
Chest.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard because when I feel in the chest, it's usually very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, it's not like super heavy, but there's something here. There's something here. And I actually was sobbing quite a lot before, so maybe it got some of it out. So that's why it's not so heavy, but yeah.
So this is the most prominent, the most acute part, the most difficult part of your experience right now in the chest, this area in the chest.
So what I would say the most difficult is feeling the pounding of the literal pulse. It's literally making me feel weak, like I can't control it, and so I'm just losing control in that sense.
Yes, so don't try to control it. The heart will calm down on its own. So feel this pulse. So feel this pulse, and also bring the heaviness of the chest in your awareness, and become curious about both. Kind of become curious about how it feels like when my heart is racing, and how does this tightness in my chest feel like. Just focus your awareness directly there.
More. It's like tightening more.
Yeah, stay with it. Stay with this tightness. And let the mind speak in the background. If the mind takes your attention away from it, just notice it, acknowledge it, and kindly, gently look at this difficulty again.
So it was like super tight, and then I let go. It's less now.
Beautiful.
Okay, but it's still there, yeah.
Don't expect it to go away. Don't expect it to go in its entirety. Just become interested.
Okay. Is it okay if I share it now?
Yeah, of course.
So I'll just quickly say that what has always been the most difficult for me from about the year of 12 years of age has been the deepest shame and worthlessness. So it began at that age and just got worse and worse. So what that literally means for me is that the ego, all about appearances and things like that, I've always felt that I was subhuman. That's how. So literally, if I, especially to do with girls, to do with women, right, earlier in life with girls. So what I literally felt like was an ugly monster. That's literally how bad it was. And this is carried through in my spiritual journey. And I've been able to let go of so many things, and been through all kinds of pain that you've talked about. But up until this morning, like you say, grace, you have no idea what's going to happen. And then suddenly something clicks, right? I've been carrying this, which is 2 pieces of information that I'm always terrified people will learn about me. They will find out. So if they don't know me, basically my parents are the ones who know, and maybe family, but that's it. Any new person, that's what's always in my mind. I am terrified that they will find this out. So I'm just going to share the first one, which is because of all of this trauma and all of these things. I've literally never been financially independent, and I've literally always lived with my parents. So in the back of my mind, the ego is literally saying, you have never stopped being a child. And much worse than that, like you're not an adult, but you're not a child. I don't even know how to explain it. So that's always terrifying to me, because especially Western society and everything, this is seen as the ultimate failure. And of course, to make it even more specific, if society were looking at me, I would be the ultimate failure, the ultimate failure. So no financial independence, and being supported by my parents. So if I were to even think of revealing this to someone that I just met, it's terrifying. But finally, I'm talking about it. So obviously, it's not like it used to be. And so that one is a little easier, even though it's still a little bit humiliating. But the second one, this is harder. So
take your time. Also, you can take a break.
It's incredible how the ego, only you can humiliate yourself. I know that. But it's so real. It feels so real, right?
Yes.
So because of what I described, that I've always felt like an ugly monster, this obviously means that there has been no romantic relationships whatsoever. Nothing, not even a kiss. And which means this is the hardest. I have to say the sentence because that's the most painful and most embarrassing. So it means that I'm 32 years old and I'm a virgin. So this is what's the most painful to say. And see, I see even the heart increasing again. Because it's everything that we've been taught is I'm the ultimate failure as a man. I'm a sexual failure. I'm a financial failure. And that's the reason why I've had those moments in the other video we were talking about where I wanted to die, because the ego was saying to me, you don't deserve to live because you're so horrible, you're so ugly, and you're so bad that just lie down and just wait for death because that's all you deserve. That's literally what I felt. Yeah, now something is coming. Some emotion, I guess.
Let's wait for it to come.
Yeah. Sometimes I think maybe I'm also ashamed of, not crying. I mean, I've been crying, but I always do this when I'm crying.
It's okay. I did too.
Natural, but
it's okay.
I'm just going to let it out.
Yes, please.
Even my stomach got like a cramp. I guess I was able to face this moment because the crazy thing is, you know, that the ego loves to rehearse. So I was doing that, but it actually was beneficial because I was imagining the scene, and every time I actually spoke the words, I started sobbing. So I kind of prepared myself. So yeah, thank you so much for your presence.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Would you mind if I commented on something that you said?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, that's in our society, especially men are shamed for not producing, for not performing financially, and of course for sexual failure. You know? And notice something, how callous the ego is.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and I'm not only talking about your ego. So you have a comment. Very brave sharing. Respect. Yes, I agree. Well done, my friend. But I'm not only talking about your ego, but I'm talking about generally the ego, right? So if we are considering, if we're talking about someone, a man, right, someone like you, who for whatever reason, for whatever circumstance, in whatever circumstance, could not do what society expected them, right? So somehow did not succeed financially, and you know, didn't succeed sexually, for example, then and is obviously disturbed about it, or embarrassed about it, or it is difficult. It is a difficult life. It is a difficult life. So what do? We humiliate and shame them even more most of the time, right? Such a person needs, if we lived in a humane society, right, then this person is the one that needs most help.
Yeah.
Right? Not rejection, but most help. Right? And so I am sorry that you find yourself in this situation. Please know that it's not due to the fault of your own. I mean, of course, you could say, well, you could do this, you could do this, you could do that. But the reason that it was difficult for you to do uh, what you want also, because I'm sure that it is not only due to the pressure from society that you wanted a romantic relationship, and then not only due to the pressure of society you wanted to become financially independent. Of course,
Right.
of course not. But the reason that you could not do that is because you were hurting very much.
Yeah.
You were hurting very much, and you didn't know how to help yourself, and it just happened that there were no one around in your life who could help you.
Yeah.
So it's not your fault. And to me, what I'm seeing right now is, you might see yourself as a failure. What I see right now is a young, handsome, healthy male who is a complete success, because you're 32 years old and you have survived in this world. And for as long as you're breathing, you are a beautiful success to me. you
Wow.
know?
Thank you so much for saying that.
And who will be, without a doubt, in some time in the future, I'm sure that you will be quite successful and popular with the girls, because you're handsome, you're smart, you're opening your heart. So please don't worry. The time will come. You will do whatever it is that you want to do. You will succeed in whatever it is you want to succeed. And it's and this pain that exists in your heart just needs your loving attention. It just needs your acceptance. It just needs this grace. So open your heart, be honest, cry, feel, and it's gonna get better and better and better.
Thank you so much. I really feel that. Yeah. I don't, I would say that it's so funny talking about awareness, because something in my mind always says this sounds arrogant. I don't know if it's the flip side of trying to be humble, which is the same thing, but in my awareness, I understand and I feel that I don't actually believe any of these things anymore. I mean, for my entire life, I believed it 100%. So
That you will always like be a failure, things like that, right? That you're
yeah,
just like that and you cannot change, and it's going to be like,
because I've faced so many things in the last few years that it's almost like I didn't believe it anymore, but the pain was there. So it's like the only thing was to release the pain.
yeah.
So do I have time to just ask two questions?
Yeah, of course. We
Um,
actually don't have anyone else right now until
okay.
so you have as much time as you want.
Okay. This is amazing to be able to ask you this. So the on Quora, what are the levels of enlightenment? And then that answer, right? And then the 4 levels of dreaming. So I wanted to ask you about the last 2 levels, which is when you think that you're God consciousness, and then we'll talk about the other one. So in my experience, and then when you say you are a slave of love, I just want to confirm if I'm seeing it correctly. Usually what I think at that level is you're walking around in the world, and if you go somewhere and there are people, you have the story, because these are just stories, right, in the mind that are believed.
These are stories, but these are also direct sensate subjective experiences. So you you feel very differently also at stages. Yeah.
So you actually do. Okay.
Yeah. So for example, in the stage that you're referring to, there's a quite an overwhelming, or it can be subtler, but it is always present, always in the foreground, the feeling of all-encompassing oneness.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then that part about you are a slave of love. And then I'm okay. So what I think that means is it also the stage where people, because you think that you are an unconditionally loving being, when the ego does come up and it's so not unconditionally loving, you are upset at yourself because literally it's like you're pretending in your mind, because it's a story, that I'm God, so I should be 100% always loving. And then when you're not, suddenly there's hatred. There's you are very upset. Like, I don't know what's going on. I should be unconditionally all the time. Does that make sense or no?
So the phenomenon that you're describing, of course, does make sense, and that's and that's exactly how it goes, right? So the ego pictures, the ego constructs stories about what you should be, and of course the enlightened story is that you should be unconditionally loving.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what happens. And then if you find yourself if you find yourself not unconditional loving, then there's usually harsh judgment, and then you feel hatred and self-loathing. So these are all the kind of continuations. So the ego is an interesting thing. It's a shapeshifter. When it abandons goals, when it abandons worldly goals, because it understands that they cannot bring happiness, which are like the contemporary social standards of success, then it creates spiritual goals, and enlightened goals, right? So it's pretty much the same. It's the same phenomenon. And so just like the ego judges you harshly for failing to achieve social goals, it also starts judging you harshly for failing to achieve enlightened goals. That wasn't enlightened enough behavior, or you shouldn't be feeling this way. So it's the same phenomena, but now the stories migrate into the spiritual sphere, and then they become weaker and weaker and weaker, and then ultimately they by the way, the worldly stories can also repeat. It's a kind of there's an event when you see that the ego doesn't exist, and then there are diminishing waves of suffering as more and more suffering uncovers from the unconscious, and so the same topics in slightly different form can come back again and again and again. So the stories mutate and morph and also come back in the same form, but less extreme, easier to handle. And the same can be said about the different states, actually. So the interesting also thing about this state of oneness is that I describe them as levels. And yes, in my experience, I was kind of irrevocably dropped into one and the other and the other. But most people, and for me it was also the case later, but most people, they kind of visit this layer, they visit those experiences again and again and again. And even after you went through a bulk of it, let's say, so as I went through a bulk of it, I was like this being of unconditional love for quite some time. Still, I would revisit a slightly, like, even as most of it has already been integrated, I would revisit a slightly more, let's say, feeling of oneness, which would also kind of come. Let's say we can describe it as a kind of a wave of oneness also. So strictly speaking, even though they are layers and there is some order to them, there's a reason that they are in this way. And so it can also be experienced in a deep meditation or in a psychedelic trip as you go, because they always come in a certain way. But experientially, as the journey, as the dream unfolds during life, during the actual living experience, they are more accurately to be talked as the facets of realization, because you can experience them again and again and again. So you can spend, like, for example, a couple of months in a very deep state of oneness, and then there will be more suffering, and then after more suffering you will experience a little bit more oneness, and then there will be more suffering, and then you will experience a little bit more oneness, maybe a little bit more emptiness. And so they are kind of more of a facet of the realization than a specifically linear progression. So when I was talking about the about this specific layer of the dream, or about this specific experience, I was talking about the experience where it actually feels very natural and free flowing to be unconditionally loving. So people in this stage. So I look like pretty normal, right? But people at this stage, and I was back then, they would be kind of exuding or kind of radiating this unconditional love. They would be like, I would also be like always smiling. I would go around like,
Oh, okay.
like this, and it's
Like
like, and you want to hug everybody. You're like non judging and things like that. So the reason it is connected to so there's still some hatred and judgment at this stage. So what you're observing, the phenomenon that you're describing, is not maybe specifically that you're at this state, but the ego's judgment that you're not at this state.
Oh, okay.
Right. So at this state, the remaining hatred and judgment at this state is the fact that this state is actually also somewhat delusional. So because at this state there's a certain level of martyrdom.
Oh, okay.
You see, it's like
could I ask something?
Yeah.
You said sorry, I'm just trying to remember now. Okay, so you have, which was very interesting, it just doesn't happen once and you're done. You can have, like you said, months, and then you So basically what you're saying is it's almost like let's say 3 months you experience it, and then when you're kind of out of it, you could notice that in general in your life something has changed permanently, but a very small, like a little bit more peace, but it's not all the time, but you notice something, right?
So if we're talking about a very complete deep path, right, then it's more of the opposite. So it's you integrate this piece to such a tremendous degree that it is always present, and it is cannot even be noticed anymore. So it can even be perceived as it's not like something changed, it's like everything changed. But still, if there's more conditioning, some teachers say it's an infinite path. So if there's a little bit more conditioning, that as more conditioning comes out and experienced, and as even if there's only a little bit of suffering left, but as it comes out and experienced, there's a slight deepening of it. Right. So if you were talking about, if you spent some time in this state and then went back, but you feel like something is carried with you afterwards, then it's more accurately described as a glimpse into it.
Glimpse.
That with your subsequent work, that your subsequent spiritual work will get you to this state as a permanent abiding realization, as a permanent abiding experience, so to say.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes so much sense. And do you mind if I asked in the last stage? Because now I understand that it's not just it happens once. It's sort of related because it happens, I guess, to both levels. But at one point, if you were in that state and then you left it, there is I don't know if the right word would be grief, because you're clinging to something in that level, and then when you kind of let it go, even though it's not complete, there is like a huge grief, right? Like, so you think that you're a loving being, and so if you finally let go of that of that period, you realize that you're, let's say, so full of hatred that you can no longer ignore it by pretending that you're just loving. But then there's like grief, like literally, like for me to accept this, wow, I'm still so full of anger. So there's like some kind of grief or something, right? When you exit that state.
Okay, so I think that you're I think that what you're describing and my description of the levels of enlightenment are somewhat different. So in my description, you don't exit it.
Oh, okay.
Right? You transcend it to a deeper level, right? So you integrate it to such a degree that it becomes a completely always present, effortless part of your experience, and there's some deeper depth to it. So the reason that I describe it as a slave of love is because the deeper depth, the deeper freedom, is also being able to not always be unconditionally loving to people.
Oh, okay. That's exactly what I thought.
But without suffering, without hatred.
Oh, okay.
See?
So you
So
feel hatred, but you're not.
no, you don't feel hatred at all. This okay. Let's separate what's. So try not to compare it to what's going on with you, because I will try to comment on this later, right? So in my description, the people who are in this stage that I described as a slave of love, they might not it's difficult to explain, but basically yeah, it's going to be hard to explain, but in the freedom of enlightenment is absolute, right? So it's not just the freedom from suffering. It's not just the freedom from hatred. It's not just the freedom from anger, but it's also the freedom in action. So most of the time, there's absolutely no reason to do any angry or hateful actions, right?
Yeah.
But the people who kind of stuck. I'm not talking about you. No, I'm talking about it's way further down the line. But the people who kind of stuck in this slave of love thing, they do not allow themselves to not act in the ways that are always pleasing and unconditional loving, even if it's in their best interest.
Oh, okay.
You see,
Could
that's
you give an example, like a
that's the difference. It so people who truly transcended this stage, and by transcended I mean not like getting back, but further beyond it and truly integrated it and went further beyond it, they can act in their own interest and in the interest of other people. So in the interest of both parties involved, even if the action itself would not be viewed by most as unconditional loving and acceptance, without any anger or hatred whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
That's the difference. So what we're talking about is something else. So basically, you've had a glimpse, right? And you had a very good, beautiful experience and understanding what it can be, like what reality can be, a glimpse into a deeper state of reality. But it was not abiding because there's still a lot of suffering in your unconscious.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you, and so you kind of went back, so to speak, to deal with the remaining suffering. So a good analogy is, I think that Sadhguru actually said, well, I don't think Sadhguru is actually a very good teacher, but some of his analogies are very good. So he had this analogy of that imagine you are in a behind the walls, right? And so a glimpse, even if it lasts for a few months or a few days, or an abiding meditation experience, or a temporary meditation experience, or a psychedelic trip, is like jumping on a trampoline. So you jump on a trampoline high enough to see what's beyond the walls, and beyond the walls is extraordinary beauty, right? So if you had a glimpse that lasted for like a few weeks, imagine that you jumped on a trampoline with a parachute, and you kind of slowly descended. You had a lot of time to look around, right? But you still slowly descended. Enlightenment is building a ladder and getting out of the encampment forever and never coming back. You cannot come back, right? Because that's it. You climbed beyond the walls, right? So you can jump as many times as you want, but you actually need to start building a ladder and getting out. So I love this analogy, because building a ladder in this case is dealing with and uncovering all of this unconscious suffering. Mm-hmm. So the grief that you were experiencing, you can describe it in any way whatsoever. But for me, for example, the grief was about how come my life isn't always like that, right? And what happened to me so that I don't experience life always like that. So there could be many layers of this grief with many changing stories. But in order for it to become an abiding, permanent, effortless experience, all of the existing egoic resistance to it and egoic suffering needs to be taken to the level of consciousness, looked at and experienced. And that's what's going on right now.
Oh, okay.
So in coming back to the description as the level of dreaming, when it's already like deeply integrated and abiding, there is still more suffering between this layer and the next layer, but it's of a slightly different nature. There's not like such an obvious grief or like I came back. It's a little bit. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. Like for example, there could be a realization that you actually cannot help everyone, and people, and you are impotent to help other people, and people only can help themselves, which in a lot of way drives the contrived part of this being, and always pleasing and smiling and hugging. And there's some authentic part, but there's also some contrived part because you want to help everybody. So there's also some suffering, but it's on a subtler level. So right now we're actually dealing with what's happening between the realization or even the glimpse into the abiding awareness and being able to abide there effortlessly, right? And all the egoic arguments and suffering and conditioning come up on the way there and have to be dealt with on a sensate experiential level.
Oh, okay. And can I just one final one, and then I'm which is the so the last one, which you say slave of death, which I think is so interesting. And now I understand, because of the trampoline was the perfect example. So if you have a little glimpse of it, right?
So Sadhguru did something good. Okay. I mean, no, he is not like, I don't want to criticize him too much, but he's a net benefit for humanity for sure.
So when you say that, so slave of death. So let's say it's possible to have a little glimpse, right? Just a little glimpse, and
yes,
right.
It's possible to have a little glimpse into all of those. Yeah,
all of them, right? So my question is, because I heard you once say, describe that death is the end of experience. You could say that, right? Yes. So does that mean that if you have a glimpse and you feel in that glimpse, you feel it would be emptiness, but it would be also, it could be described as lack of any pain, as long as you're kind of in that glimpse? So, because I'm asking that because if it's the reason that it's called slave of death, I'm trying to see if I'm correct, is when you feel the emptiness, you cling to it because it feels so amazing compared to the rest of the pain that you have, that you want to remain there. Does that make sense? So it's like you want to remain in the emptiness, and then you say usually that you have to return, but maybe this is at the very end of this.
So same thing here. You're misinterpreting it precisely the same way here. When you are in the state in an abiding way, so when I speak about the levels of dreaming, you cannot want to remain there.
Okay.
Because it is the only reality. You cannot go back. Because it is not something that can be clung to, right? Because uh, the desire to remain there means, and the existence of suffering, of continued suffering that prevents you from remaining there effortlessly is the same thing. So you so again, you're talking about it from a perspective of a glimpse, like, oh, okay, this is so painless, I want to remain there. But the very fact that you say this is so painless, I want to remain there, means that there's more pain. There's still more
Right.
pain.
Of course, yes.
Right. So only when it is illuminated and experienced, you will kind of remain there effortlessly. But they would be not possible to come back to the pain.
Oh, okay.
You see, so.
But what's weird is if it's abiding, this is, you call it the last level of dreaming. Isn't there like the ultimate step where that has to be dropped?
So the ultimate step that has to be dropped, which again is much ahead of you, but the ultimate the difference between this and what I call the complete enlightenment, and of course there would also be kind of some pain, but it would be super subtle, right? In my description, I say it's almost like no dreaming at all. The last dreaming is the most subtle. It's almost like no dreaming at all. So the amount of pain that is still in the mind in this last level of the dream is very, very subtle. But basically, so at this stage, you can say all egoic pain is transcended. The pain of bodhisattva's compassion, again, the pain of this endless compassion that makes you to help people, is transcendent. You can still be helping people, but there's no pain in it, meaning that if you don't help people, then there is no pain either. The pain of like trying to appear always loving and beautiful, which are connected also to compassion, is transcended. But the only thing, the only small aspect which is not transcended is a subtle clinging to the fact that death makes all of life meaningless.
Oh, okay.
And that clinging manifests as a kind of passivity. So like there is nothing to do. In the subjective experience, this stage feels like you're not the one who's doing things at all. Things just happen. Like there is no doer at all. So someone like that would object to any interpretation like they're doing things. You know, like I can say I stood up, I'm doing things. You know, they would object to it. So there's the passivity of just letting life happen without taking without being an active participant in it, right? So when you hear stories about, when people speak about, like, you know, historical sages who basically did nothing but sit in their ass all day, even if they were not kind of hugging anybody, but they were kind of passive. That's what we're talking about, basically.
Oh, okay.
So there's it is much deeper. There is no like, oh, I want to cling there because there's some remaining suffering. There's very, very little suffering there.
Oh, okay.
The only remaining suffering is that yes, death make life completely meaningless, and strictly speaking, it doesn't matter what happens in life, because death renders all of it void.
Mm-hmm.
But this itself also is an empty realization. This realization itself doesn't matter, precisely for the same reason. And this subjective experience of non-doership and is in some way an illusion. You may experience it subjectively, but you can still do things, and you can still influence your life and the life of others in the positive way, in an active way. You don't have to like sit around on your butt all day just waiting to die, basically. So it's a kind of coming back full circle to a profoundly human, profoundly ordinary experience, because neither the slave of love, when you're like all radiating, or like the slave of death, when you're like super equanimous but very passive, are ordinary human life, and they're not perceived by the humans as ordinary. So it's a coming back full circle to a profoundly ordinary human experience, which can include anything at all, not just like teaching, but you can go play basketball for all that matters. So you can go like be anyone at all in the world. You don't even have to be a teacher. You're just a healthy human.
Yeah.
Right. So it's coming back to become a completely healthy human without any unnecessary suffering. But still, the human life continues to be human life, just without any unnecessary suffering, without any suffering from unprocessed past. Because all the suffering that we're talking about here on the spiritual path is the suffering that has been experienced in the past, but not this. I wouldn't say experienced, but basically the suffering that was created as a result in the psyche, in the unconscious, a result of the mistreatments of the past, but then was tucked away, suppressed, repressed, or denied. So yes, ultimately we're all going to die, and yes, ultimately this realization gives birth to flowering of tremendous love. That's one part of this experience, but it also gives way to the realization of tremendous equanimity. This is the other part. This is the slave of death, right? But ultimately, when both of those are integrated properly and deeply enough, then it's just ordinary human life, and you can be adventurous. You can do a lot of different things. You can start a family. There is nothing that prevents you to take the course in life which you want to take. But it takes a long time to actually integrate it deeply, and almost no one completes the path during the lifetime, just because it's there's a lot to work through.
Yeah.
But the deeper you go, the better it gets. So
it's such a fascinating conversation. Is there somebody waiting, or I could ask maybe?
We have Catalin waiting. We could actually do something fun. I've never done this before. How about this one? 3 people.
Oh yeah.
Hi. What's your name? The person that's not Artem.
Oh, Steve.
Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Thanks for sharing. It was really nice to hear you.
Thank you so much. So could I ask just one, like this one I think is just a simple one. I was asking those deep ones. I noticed, because I watched all the lives, 2 times you didn't use the word mirroring, but that's what you were doing. So I just want to ask about that. So one was when you had that very interesting interaction with the guy that kept calling you a sociopath. You know that one?
Yeah.
And so I thought it was fascinating. I connected this with another thing that you said, that if you're extremely aware and everything, you're never going to hit your child unless they hit you, which I thought was very fascinating. Because so this kind of is the same thing. Like when you were, I forgot to say, when he called you a sociopath, you would call him back, like, no, you're the sociopath, right?
Well, that's because that's what I think. I mean, I don't mirror people deliberately.
Oh, okay.
I don't like actually people. This mirroring effect is the source of tremendous amount of also confusion and misinterpretation and misuse on the spiritual path. So people use, the ego uses the mirroring technique to protect itself. Like, oh no, this is you. Oh no, this is you. Or like people engage in the mirroring technique to try to deliver a spiritual lesson, so to speak, or to show the other person something about themselves. Authentic mirroring is not a technique at all. So I'm not trying to mirror anybody at all. I'm just being myself. And if I honestly speak to another person about what I think without any filters, then mirroring just happens. Mirroring happens the mirroring effect, so it's much better to call it effect and not a technique. It happens in the psyche of a person who attacks, because when they attack me, they actually attack themselves.
Right.
That's why the attacks are factually incorrect. That's why people would like, for example, call me, cult leader. Like, what cult leader? I live in my house with my wife for like 7-8 years. No one even visits me. What cult leader? What are you talking about? But that's their own kind of, they see in my image, because I so you see, the way that it works is that the ego in the psyche wants to kind of connect to the other ego in the psyche, in the psyche of another individual, based on conditioning and suffering in some way or another, and because it is, and this connection has some level of influence, right? So either influence them or be influenced, and there's some sort of a game, game of accusation, justification, explanation, something like that, or a game of manipulation. And so when you interact with a person with whom it is not possible, when you try to manipulate, for example, a person who is not possible to manipulate, but you're unconscious of your own attempts to manipulate them, your ego tells you that you are like, perfect and saintly, and it's far from the case. But you are unconscious. You think you're a good person, basically, but you try to manipulate them, and it's impossible to manipulate them. Then the impression is that they manipulated you.
Right.
Right. And the same thing, like basically projection as a mechanism is that when you accuse another person of what you are yourself guilty of, because it is too painful for you to admit it.
Right.
And so the projection is basically how the mirroring effect arises, right? So I'm not trying to mirror anyone at all, right? I'm just being myself. I say what I think. I'm honestly, I say my honest opinions. I try to help people the way that I can, right? But for example, if someone would unconsciously very much like to be a cult leader, or they literally promote cultish ideas, right? Or they kind of exhibit true cultish behavior when they speak to their students like this, and then they look at the teacher like this, which is kind of a very deep spiritual hierarchy, which is the case with another person who was accusing me. But it's too difficult for them. It would be too painful for them to recognize it in themselves, that they're prone to this sort of idolizing others, that they want the students to idolize them, and it's a part of their psyche. It's a part of the game that they're engaged in. That's why they look at the teacher like this. Then when they see a person free of that, they can only kind of project that. They can only say, "Oh, he must be that." You see, because otherwise they would have to say, "Well, I'm that." Then it's like, what choice does he have, right? Either I'm a sociopath or he is.
Yeah.
But something is wrong, right? Something is off here, right? It's like you have to accuse someone. Like you either see it in yourself or you accuse another person, but there's no other choice for the ego. So that's how projections happen, and that's how the mirroring effect happens. But it's not something that I do deliberately.
Okay.
It's not. I don't like engage in this techniques that I know, like, no, it's you. No, it's like, if I think it's you, then I'll tell you, but I also can explain why I think it's you. Like, that's the difference between, so pure people who project, or people who engage in mirroring techniques, if you actually dig the conversation deeper, they cannot explain to you why.
Right.
Or they will get very angry when they explain why, or agitated, or they will start lying, factually lying. Oh, I think it's this because you did this, this, and this, and you didn't do that, right? So it's a defense mechanism in the psyche.
And one more thing that I thought was hilarious was when you were doing that group live, like everybody was basically saying they were enlightened, and then you had that interaction with one of the people. It was pretty funny. At the end, you were like, "You're not free."
Oh, you're talking about the bearded mystic.
Remember
that? He isn't. No.
But I just thought that was
and that's why this is why there was such a and by the way, I probably should stop doing that. It's either with that guy that you mentioned previously, or the guy in the bearded mystic. It doesn't really matter how delusional and difficult their state of consciousness is. But since they're not my students, and I don't have any influence over them, there is no connection between us. They don't have any access to me physically. Then I'm basically just poking their egos.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, such people tend to abuse and mislead thousands of people.
Yeah.
Some of them have, some of them have their own groups, which they run, and then some of them have presence on YouTube, linked to tens of thousands of people. But it's also it is something that I also suffered about. It was unpleasant to realize how that this is the state of the world. But then ultimately, I had to make peace with that. So I probably should stop doing that. But in this particular case, notice that I only said a few words, and first of all, I asked not to be interrupted, right? So he thought that it was completely okay for me for him to interrupt me, and me just basically voicing even my discontent with being interrupted. That's somehow not okay, right? So I only said a few words, right? But notice the reaction. So the reaction was extraordinarily aggressive. So so this is how it all started. So then I'm a narcissist, I'm a cult leader, like all of this. So this is how projection works. There is no insult greater to the ego that thinks that it's enlightened than someone calmly saying to that they aren't. So it's the ultimate insult for the enlightened ego. And so in order to protect itself, it will demonize another person. And this is, by the way, it's the same phenomenon that you can read about. Like, there are many stories in spirituality, as a student comes to the master and say, the master, I'm enlightened, and the master will be, get out of here, you're not, and things like that. That's the same reason that they're doing it, because for as long as it is painful for you to not being able to convince someone that you're enlightened, or for as long as the opinion of, especially of your teacher, because your teacher is so revered, oh, teacher, I'm enlightened. No, take your bullshit out and get out of here, and that's for as long as it is painful for you, or important, but for as long as it's important for you to be seen as enlightened, or it is painful for you and uncomfortable when someone does not recognize your enlightenment, the complete enlightenment did not happen. But in case with the student and the master, there's some kind of a connection, there's some kind of a trust, and if the student is an authentic student, that he will continue to struggle and until they work through the pain, and then they will drop the attempts to convince the master that they're enlightened, and that's what the master is doing, right? But in the case of other people, when there is no teacher-student connection, it basically just agitates another person, and I mean, in some aspects it's good for them, but in some aspects, it's best to leave them alone, because they usually get very aggressive, and so I probably will not do that anymore.
Okay, thank you so much, Artem, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for that. That was insane. And I'm going to keep watching you because, yeah, thank you so much.
For as long as it helps, absolutely. If it helps, keep watching me. And you can also schedule one of my meetings with me, by the way, which is, let me, yeah, okay, so thank you. I will take you off stage now. So let me add a link. So anyone who wants to do a one-on-one session with me, please follow this link. So I highly recommend it. It's very, very different from reading my texts or watching my videos even. It's not as potent as in physical presence, but it's still it's a very different experience. So I highly recommend it. We can do a bunch of things. I do guided meditations. There's also direct transmission. Of course, it's not as direct on video. That's it's much less potent, like maybe 10 times less potent than in person. But still, looking at each other in silence can also work. There is a guided meditation. You can ask me questions about the spiritual path. We can discuss your specific situation too. I give advice with regards to practice, and then there are other methods of self-inquiry that we can practice. Like there is radical self-inquiry, which we can radical inquiry, which we can practice to uncover the egoic pains and insecurities. So a bunch of things that we can practice in one-on-one meetings. And then also I would like to ask you, everyone who's watching, that if you like my work, if you like what I do, then please support my work. It's over here, so you can become my patron on Patreon, or you can schedule a donation on PayPal, one-time or monthly donation. Please, if you can afford it, please support my work. I do most of my work for free. It does not pay my bills, so it's getting more difficult. So if you can, please, I would be very grateful to you. Now let's get back to our guests. We have some comments. Actually, let me see if I can address the comments very quickly. So Samuel says, I experienced non-doership, the lack of free will of the ego. I also agree that every emotional experience is an experience you want on some level. Yes. So every emotional experience, ego is mostly built upon emotion. So every emotional experience on some level is desired one, because it's at least after awakening. So let's say after awakening. So after when the unfolding of the dream started, that every emotional experience is part of the unfolding of the dream. So on some level, they're all desired. The fear, the anger, the tears, all of it. I also see that an unconditioned person wouldn't harm himself physically. Yes. And we created our own egos, and yet people sometimes do commit suicide. Yes. So there is a stage in the spiritual path after which suicide is not possible. But suicide does happen, of course, and it happens in the spiritual path too. So I actually write and speak quite a lot about suicide. So suicide is always the biggest mistake. So suicide ideation comes from self-hatred, and in my experience, pretty much everyone who ventures on the spiritual path deep enough has to deal with at least some amount of suicide ideation. So because the ego doesn't actually exist, and it doesn't want to exist ultimately, because it doesn't, because it's an artificial set of false beliefs in the human brain. And so from that perspective, suicide is when the ego confuses itself with the body and delusionally, mistakenly thinks that the way to go away is to kill the body. So suicide is always a mistake, absolutely. It seems sort of impossible to reconcile this perspective. Do you have any thoughts about what I'm not saying? Okay, this is very interesting, because to me, there's absolutely nothing to reconcile in what you wrote. So I'm not sure. Like, to me, it makes all perfect sense. So if there is some conflict or between, if you feel like you have a few perspectives that need reconciliation, please submit a comment that is more direct. Like, there's one perspective and and I see them as contradictory and why, and then maybe I can comment. But this just common sense, which you wrote. Okay. So Jacob says, thank you for sharing. Alex says, I can relate so much to what you're sharing. FP Former says, the YouTube is working normally, but the streaming app is so like, interesting. Thank you for letting me know. Drake says, does anyone know which episodes they're talking about? I actually deleted it. The question, since I can get to StreamYard due to some unknown luck. Okay. So the persona which wants to help today was so miserable that it yelled for help, something it seems to be embarrassed of, and I had a very strong inner response to it from this source. I guess the question would be, why is there embarrassment of asking for help, and why is waiting for so long before asking, as it has to be so bad, and it just... Okay, yeah, this is actually very common. It's like, I don't need it, and then it gets really bad. Yeah, so this is actually very common, and that's a very common question. It's very simple. The answer is easy, because you were taught that asking for help is a sign of weakness. That's all it is. There's the belief that was instilled by society that if you're asking for help, you're weak. And it's really bad to be weak. And if you're weak, then you're not deserving. In reality, asking for help is oftentimes one of the bravest things that you can do. And you will find yourself that not all people subscribe to this absurd notion that if you're asking for help, then you're weak. And people who truly love you will help you. And then there are people who do not consider it a sign of weakness at all and enjoy helping other people. So that's why embarrassment, because there's judgment associated with this. Oh, you're asking for help. It means you're not capable. You're weak. You deserve criticism. You deserve condemnation for not being able to handle it on your own. But no one can handle it on their own. And sometimes all of us need help. So there's nothing wrong with asking for help. I mean, once again, oftentimes asking for help is the bravest, most difficult thing to do. And if it feels like this in your experience, if it feels like you need help, but asking for help, that asking for help is more difficult than not asking for help, then ask for help and work through the difficulty. Then by not asking for help, you are in self-rejection. Okay, Ari says to this person that I just responded to, I don't know what browser you're using. Oh, okay, so that's all right. So I still have some time. We have Catalin, Maxim, and Tilak. Tilak, have we spoken before? Okay, we did. Okay, so then I'll start in the order. I'm not sure if I'll get to you, but I'll try. So, Catalin.
Hey.
Hi. I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly, by the way.
Yeah, it's good enough. Catalin.
Catalin. Okay.
Yeah. Where are you from? I'm curious.
Russia. Originally Russian.
Oh, okay. So I noticed that you focus a lot on emotion and conditioning, and you talk a lot about that, and I haven't found that to be very common in spirituality and so
it's very
on.
rare. Yeah.
And that's what really attracted me to your videos and content and so on. And I did want to ask you about what you don't approach and how you see it. I'm very curious about inquiry into what feels like a me here, and to feel it out, to feel out the sensations and to investigate that sense. Like, for example, in the visual field, in the senses. Do you see any value behind that? How do you think it works, if it does, and have you practiced something of the sort?
So I personally would not call investigation of any sensation inquiry. So what I call inquiry, for example, are methods like Ramana's method of, and that is also taught by many teachers, of trying to find the one who's experiencing, or who am I? Well, who's asking that question? Like trying to find an entity that that you think is you. You won't find it. so even you will not find anything in your conscious experience which asks the question, who am I? And that's actually what the method is based on. The method is based on exhausting the mind from all attempts to find it, and it can be excruciating. And I think that all methods that are based on, that are trying to find or decompose the ego without the emotional work, or without focusing on the conditioning, are somewhat dangerous, because they either will not work, or if they do work, they oftentimes result in a very kind of a psychotic kind of state. So from my perspective, investigation of direct sensate experience is a much more direct and also at the same time much safer path. Now, I generally approve investigation like any experience for as long as it's direct, right? So yes, the bulk of the spiritual path is investigating the emotional difficulty, the energetic difficulty, because so the bulk of the spiritual path is investigating the suffering as it comes in the emotional sense. But the five aggregates, so to speak, right? So the hearing, vision, bodily sensations, they're also sensate direct experience from which you are separated from the mind. So approaching them directly and investigating them directly is just as valid method of practice as investigating emotions directly, because they're also all very physical and they're very sensate. So for example, vipassana body scanning technique, wonderful practice, right? You can practice even during daytime. You can practice, for example, taking your attention directly on the hearing, the sounds. In some guided meditations that I did before, and I plan to record a video with some guided meditation, we start with, I do this in my retreat, so we start with focusing on breathing, which is also a direct experience, then followed by trying to focus on approaching directly the experience of sound, just the sound around you, then the experience of sensations in the body, and then later after that we go deeper into the emotion experience. All of those experiences are direct experiences. Now, the interesting thing about bodily sensations, vision, and hearing is that in the normal calm state of mind, I'm not talking about something when a tiger eats you, but in a normal kind of normal state of mind, they all very, in the ultimate reality, they're all very beautiful, very clear, very pristine, very enjoyable, and very calm. So the difficulty of focusing on them, the difficulty of keeping your attention on them, is actually because there's something else that is constantly pulling your attention away, and that's the unresolved suffering. And so what tends to happen because of this is that even though when you practice if you practice giving the attention to your direct experience, let's say vision, of hearing, or your neutral bodily sensations such as breath and other things, that if you practice that, and if you're successful at that, let's say you spent like half an hour where most of your attention was there, or an hour or something like that, that what you will tend to notice is that in the subsequent days, oh, now suddenly there is more, because there's some sort of a form of a rebellion of the ego, because the ego doesn't want you to keep your attention there, you see. And so what you notice is that in the subsequent days, there's more emotional reactivity. There's like you will become more, you will not necessarily become more calm from just putting your attention on this neutral parts of your experience directly. That's not possible. You can only become more calm in an effortlessly in an effortless way by investigating and transcending the suffering. But what will happen is that as you practice it, the other part of it, which prevents you from being there effortlessly, so to say, will also start to become more visible, you see. And from that perspective, it's a good practice. So you can practice it. Just don't expect that you can circumvent or bypass this other part, right? So if you practice, whether in meditation or if you're taking a walk, if you practice putting direct attention on what you see, on what you hear, right? So then don't be surprised when you will then, if you notice that this itself exacerbates or kind of makes the ego tantrums more pronounced, and that would be good, because that would be now that would be the time to focus on whatever you're feeling emotionally or energetically. And if you're doing this right, if you're doing this practice right, if you actually truly investigate your direct experience of vision, hearing, then it has to happen. It is bound to happen, because you cannot really circumvent anything. Because the only reason that your attention isn't effortlessly resting on all of these senses is because it is continuously pulled to the unresolved suffering. That's the only reason. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that was a great answer. Yeah, and I relate to that. That like a lot of stuff does come up after investigating the senses afterwards.
Yes.
Like it's so clear, the
Exactly.
energetics and the emotions.
Yes.
It just calls out to be. So just one quick, or actually, I think there's somebody waiting. Is there?
Yeah, we have two people waiting.
Okay, that's going to be it. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Okay, Maxime. Hi.
Hello. So my question is, I have a sense that the way emotions express in my body physically and mentally, there's a bit of disconnection. What I mean is that when I do longer meditations, there starts to appear a pain in my chest, in my heart, but my mind is quiet, so there's only just the pain, and there's no mental reaction to that pain, and it feels like that pain just draws my attention to it.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, you won't always hear the story behind the pain. Then just still place the focus of your attention still on the direct experience of this pain. It doesn't matter if there's a story or not. The mind can be completely quiet, but still put the attention on the tension, on the pain itself.
But that's like a because I first thought that it could be something physical, but then I noticed that it only happens during long meditations. So
most likely not. Then yeah.
yeah, so so just staying with my attention in that
Yes.
sensation of
Yes, you will. So also, another sign that that it's not physical would be that if you give it enough time, it will kind of flatten. It would sort of you will kind of move through it. It will kind of dissolve into the overall conscious experience. So try to stay with it for as long as it takes to see it at least once. So don't wish for it to go away. Become very interested about it. Become very curious about it, and look at this specific pain. Like if it takes half an hour, half an hour. If your mind is quiet, it will actually make it easier. If it takes an hour, and then let it take an hour. But I'm curious, what happens if you actually give it enough time?
okay, I'll
And
try
let me
to
know.
give it more time
Yeah.
because it at some point it becomes a bit too much, and my mind starts to like after I don't know because I lose track of time when it happens, and I never went to the end when it stopped or dissolved or something. It always comes back.
So there is a moment when the mind sort of comes back online and starts talking, when it becomes too much.
It feels more like boredom more than I can take it because the pain is not strong enough that I can't take it. It's more like okay, I get used to the pain, to
Uh-huh.
that pain, and it's just it's like repetitive,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I just need more time in the meditation because the pain comes like after maybe 40 or 50 minutes of meditation, and I can stay for like maybe 20 more. But I'm not
Yeah,
used to long meditations.
it's
That's
kind of unlikely that it's physical. I mean, it's possible, but it's unlikely. Okay, I see. Still, I mean, if meditation is your main method of practice, I would say give it some time. I mean, but let's why don't you try giving it more time and then schedule a one-on-one session with me, because I don't think that we haven't spoken in quite some time, and then we can talk about it and maybe see if we can discover if it's connected to something that can be also investigated on the level of dialogue. Maybe not, but
the same thing happens with, I guess that's fear, because I can't quite understand, is that my body starts to shake and sweat, but there's no mental reaction. Just I'm there feeling my body shaking.
oh well, then it is certainly connected to yeah. When you say there's no mental reaction, you mean that you're not hearing any description
Yes.
or any thought or any story. That's completely and totally fine.
Okay.
So that's the main answer. This is completely and totally fine, and that's actually good. That there's some shaking, there's some fear. That's good. So I would say keep meditating, keep doing exactly what you're doing. Just give it a little bit more time.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Tilak, hi.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My primary purpose was to go in the StreamYard thing was to investigate the like heightened heart rate that I've experienced in the past when I did it. Um, and it was interesting. I felt the heightened heart rate like the previous questioner was saying, but there was the absence of the mental reaction, and that was kind of a new experience for me. So that was cool. In the meantime, I did think of a question just sort of as a a reason to be here. It's it's a question I have directly to you, but then also like people in general on the path. The question is, what moved you after your ego dissolved completely or close to completely? And in general, what moves people after the ego has dissolved? Like, what is the driving force behind actions in life? And yeah, like, what is purpose, I guess?
That's a question that is somewhat difficult to answer, and the answer to this changed as I progressed on the spiritual path. Right now, so let's start with the previous stage. So at some stage, it's at one stage I began to feel that life itself moves me. So that then later love moved me. Even at this stage, I already understood that my life has no purpose. So my life doesn't have a purpose. What I do can have a purpose, but my life doesn't have a purpose. Then at a later stages, it felt like nothing moved me at all. That things just happen. Right now, with a little bit more sanity than this stages, I can tell that still my life doesn't have a purpose. The purpose of life is what I make of it, but not in a way that I need to achieve something, but whatever I want to do in each precise moment can have purpose. But my life overall cannot have a purpose because death destroys everything completely. So right now I can tell you that I am moved most of all by love and reason. So I do, and this applies not only to my teaching but to whatever I do in my own life. So the previous answers are also correct, right? I can say that I always do what I want. I can say that I have no free will or I have infinite free will. It's the same to me. I can say that that I'm one with the flow of life, that I don't, that life just happens, that I don't. But those are somewhat philosophical descriptions, I think, which made much more sense to me back then when this experience was very new, and in quite a stark contrast with how I experienced life before, right? So right now, my experience of life, like first of all, I always do what I want, right? So it doesn't mean that my life doesn't have problems, or it doesn't mean that I would not have to do something that I don't like to do for the betterment of myself or others in the future. But even if I'm doing that, I still do that because I want to, right? So and teaching also, I want to teach and it gives me pleasure. So I would say that I am moved by good willingness towards myself and other, and reason. most of all, which is the natural state of things. It's a natural state of things. So every animal is moved most of all by their own survival and wanting themselves to thrive. But in our society, that's fairly easy. And I mean, on the bodily level, right? On the body level, on the social level, it's impossible. Everyone hates each other, everyone judges each other all the time. But on the body level, on the level of survivals, we humans dominated the planet so much that for most people, again, the tragedy is that it's not for all. But at least in the Western society, that's fairly easy. And so once this is taken care of, I have ample of free time. So I do the things that I enjoy, or I do the things that are beneficial to other people that I like to do, and that I think are the right things to do. So that would be the reason part of it. So it's a question which I can answer with some form of clever one-liner if I think about it. But if I give a very extended answer, then it kind of comes off as cumbersome. So again, like, imagine just an ordinary human being who's ordinary in every way, but who just doesn't suffer. What are they moved by? Pleasure, joy, and reason. Probably.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for your answer.
I'm surprised it does, but all right. Thank you for your question. Okay. Bye-bye. All right. So I guess that's it. We'll have a couple of comments. Let me see if I can. Ari says, "Oh, okay. So that's not to me." Yeah. Okay. That's it. Yeah. So that's it. All right. Thank you for coming to this satsang. So the next one is going to be a couple of weeks from now. Yeah. So again, join our community. Please support my work. Schedule one-on-one sessions with me. And best of luck to you on the spiritual path. Also, you can. I live in Northern California, so you can visit me in person. We will be doing probably our next retreat will be somewhere in-person retreat will be sometime in spring. But if you're in California, then you can visit me in person. You can also come to the community and help organize some kind of a local satsang. If you in Bay Area, that would be perfectly fine too. So we can do dialogues and guided meditation also. So I hope it was useful for you, and I hope to hear from you. And I wish you best of luck on the spiritual path towards the deepest truth of your nature. So bye, everybody. I love you all.